Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Sam from Historic Travels and welcome to another video. Now guys, for today's video, I have a very special story that I want to tell all of you. In today's video, I want to tell the story of the man who was directly responsible for saving the most lives from Titanic. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, the first thing I want to clarify here is, I honestly believe that anybody who played any role in helping out on the night that the Titanic went down is a hero in my book, and they did help save lives. And this could be anyone, from the men who were down in the boiler room shoveling coal to keep the Titanic under steam, those in the engine room who were responsible for keeping the electricity going, the wireless guys for sending out the distress signal, all of the Titanic's officers and crew who were helping lower the lifeboats. All of these people are heroes in my book. However, there was one person on the Titanic's crew who was directly responsible for getting the most people off of the Titanic before the ship went down. And his story is the one that I want to tell in today's video. How many of you out there already know who I'm going to be talking about? But you probably already know because you saw the title of this video. Anyway, if you know who I'm going to be talking about, please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I want to tell the story of First Officer William Murdoch. He was in charge of lowering all of the Titanic's lifeboats on the ship's starboard side. And honestly, most of the people who survived the sinking of the Titanic that night had Murdoch to thank for it. So join me in today's video as I tell the story of First Officer William Murdoch, the man who directly saved the most lives from Titanic. William Murdoch was born on February 28, 1873, and even from a young age, Murdoch was fascinated by both ships and the sea. And honestly, this isn't that surprising, since Murdoch's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather had all been captains of various vessels throughout history. So, it's only natural that after William Murdoch grew up, he quickly set out to find a career as a sailor on a vessel, so he could sail the oceans, just like his family before him. Now, before William Murdoch would eventually be employed by the White Star Line, he was an officer with the Royal Naval Reserves, and he did that for quite a while. Now, in the year 1900, he was officially employed by the White Star Line, and due to his amazing performance, he quickly progressed through the ranks. And where William Murdoch was with the White Star Line for a pretty good while, he was with the company from 1900 to 1912 when he would eventually be on board the Titanic. But you see, since he was with the company for such a long time, he served on a really large number of White Star Line vessels. I was able to find a list of a good number of the ships he served on. In 1901, he served on a ship called the SS Runic. Then, in 1903, he served on a ship known as the SS Arabic. Now, in 1904, he served on a ship called the RMS Celtic. And for you White Star Line fans out there, you would know that the Celtic is one of the famous ships that was part of a fleet of ships known as the Big Four. So, yes, William Murdoch served on a Big Four ship. And actually, he had more to do with the Big Four than you might think, but more on that in a second. Now, after he served on the Celtic, in 1904, he also served on the Germanic. Now, in 1905, he transferred to the Oceanic. Then in 1906, he served on another Big Four ship, the Cedric. Isn't that just so cool? It's so cool that he had something to do with those ships. And then, in 1907, he served on the Adriatic. So, you see, the Big Four, there were 4 of those ships in total, as the name implies. The Baltic, the Adriatic, the Celtic, and the Cedric. And throughout William Murdoch's career, he served on 3 out of the 4 Big Four ships. Isn't that cool? I just thought that was so cool that he had something to do with such a famous fleet of ships. Now, after he served on the Adriatic in 1907, he then got transferred to the brand new RMS Olympic, the pride of the White Star Line. He joined this ship in 1911, and he would serve on the Olympic until he was eventually transferred to the RMS Titanic in the year 1912. Now, when William Murdoch was serving on board the RMS Olympic, he was serving on board this ship as the Olympic's first officer. And it should also be mentioned that Murdoch was serving with quite a few people on board the Olympic that he would later serve with on board the Titanic. This includes Captain Smith and Chief Officer Henry Wilde. And all 3 of these men would have the exact same ranks on Titanic that they have on board the Olympic. Now, it should also be mentioned that Murdoch was still on board the Olympic on September 20th, 1911. And for you White Star Line historians out there, you'll know what I'm about to talk about. You see, on September 20th, 1911, this is when the collision between the RMS Olympic and the HMS Hawke occurred. And based on where Murdoch was currently stationed on board the Olympic at the time, his testimony was very valuable into the later inquiry into the incident. You see, at the time of the collision, Murdoch was stationed somewhere on the Olympic's stern, and he said during the inquiry he didn't see the incident happen, but he arrived on scene shortly after because the Hawke happened to slam into the Olympic's hull very close to the Olympic stern section. So his testimony was very valuable in determining the details of the incident between the Olympic and the Hawke. Now, as a result of the Olympic-Hawke collision, the damage to the Olympic was so extreme that the ship had to return to her home shipyard of Harland & Wolff in Belfast in order to undergo extensive repairs. While the Olympic was in Belfast getting repaired, her sister ship, the RMS Titanic, was in her final stages of construction. The ship was in her fitting out process. Do you see this photo currently on screen? Do you see that very incomplete ship at the front of the photo, and then do you see the complete ship in the background? Well, that ship at the front of the photo, that's Titanic. It's so crazy to see that ship in her final stages of construction and so incomplete. And the complete ship in the background, well, that's the Olympic. Now, the repairs to the Olympic took roughly 6 weeks to complete, and during that time I wasn't able to find that much information about Murdoch's activities. So it's quite possible he simply returned home for a bit, or he may have been busy with the inquiries into the Olympic-Hawke incident. Anyway, Murdoch returned to the Olympic in December of 1911, and he continued to serve on that ship until March of 1912, when, because the White Star Line was so happy with how he performed on the Olympic, they decided to give him a promotion and move him to their brand new revolutionary ocean liner. First Officer William Murdoch was now going to serve as the chief officer on the brand new RMS Titanic when it set out on its maiden voyage in April of 1912. However, before the Titanic left Southampton on its maiden voyage, there was a last-minute reshuffling of the Titanic's senior officers. You see, Captain Smith wanted Henry Wilde, who was his chief officer on board the Olympic, to sail with him on the Titanic because he originally wasn't scheduled to be on board Titanic. So, at the very last minute, Captain Smith brought him on board as the Titanic's chief officer, the rank that Murdoch was supposed to take. So as a result of this, Murdoch basically got demoted down one rank from chief officer to senior officer. So even though Murdoch was promised chief officer on board the Titanic, he would now serve once again as the first officer on board the Titanic, just like he did with the Olympic. Then at 12 noon on April 10th, 1912, with First Officer William Murdoch on her bridge, the RMS Titanic departed Southampton, bound for New York City, on her maiden voyage. Alright everybody, well hey, with the Titanic now officially leaving Southampton, I think this is the appropriate place to pause Murdoch's story for now. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you tune in to episode 2 when we tell everything that Murdoch did on the night that the Titanic sank and how he was directly responsible for getting the most people off of the Titanic before the ship went down. If you enjoyed this video, be sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps out a lot. And thank you guys so much for being here. You all are awesome. You all take care, and I'll see you in the next one.